Hello, you're through the Books Boys. You've got Dean on the line. Who's calling?
Oh, SA Sutila.
Awesome. Sharon, we were just talking about your book, The Stealing. So it's a nice coincidence that you called in. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Great
Great.
to hear. We were just talking about The Stealing here, and I read this one a week or two ago, and I have to say it had a very interesting sort of it's an interesting take because it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I wasn't sure what to expect from it. It's your debut novel, obviously, so I hadn't read, anything else. And I'm thinking, okay, what's the vibe going to be? On the front, we've got this lovely, lovely cover. And I just thought, okay, this is going to be some romantic elements, but I didn't know what to expect because there's some otherworldliness to it, and there's a lot of cool stuff happening. Where did the ideas for this come from?
Oh, I mean, it's a lifetime of experience. I mean, starting off at the coast of Delaware, where the setting takes place. I mean, a lot of the inspiration is from really my growing up on the coast. Kind of the eeriness of, where the bay or the ocean meets the coastline, and, kind of how it's sort of country and marsh and all these kinds of things, all these elements. And there's a lot of storms and all these kinds of things. So I think I was mostly inspired by really the isolation with COVID, and it sort of took me back to a childhood where there wasn't a lot of people and there was quite a lot of natural elements, the storms and so forth, and all of that seems very, seemed larger than life when you're a kid, because it's, you can have a lot of fear with that. So.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit. I mean, I'll go through the sort of basic plot in a moment, but tell us a little bit about Max, because he's obviously totally different from anything else in the book. What was the inspiration to kind of include that kind of character? Like, is he real? Are we meant to know if he's real? Is he a kind of dream world, or is it not meant to be clear?
I created him sort of as the divine interference, right? In our lives, we can control a lot of our lives. We can make decisions when we wake up in the morning, but there's always this, idea, especially, that there are things out of our control. And there's this also can be interference by others. You can have interference, meaning you were on your way to work or something, and then somebody calls you with an absolute emergency.
Yeah.
And your day is changed. And so Max is the entity that changes the course and direction of things as we're trying to make decisions. And and he's interfering kind of well-meaning, which is what a lot of people in your life, they're well-meaning, they mean to help you, and sometimes it doesn't always work out for the best, and sometimes it does.
Mm-hmm. There's one thing I like, which is that it's unclear whether Grant really believes in Max or not, but he says this line, I've loaded it here: my body is made from the land, Max is the spirit of death, but he cannot hurt me because I'm the spirit of life. So I was never clear whether he fully believed Sarah about Max, but he goes along with it anyway. And I think he's good with her in that way. So I really, really that endeared me to him a lot,
Well, yeah, I think that, all of us, even if you don't consider yourself a superstitious person or a religious person or, all these kinds of things, there's still this element of the unknown, things that we can't quite explain. And because he believed that she was saved by divine intervention, but he had a hand in it, he believes that there's, a chance that all of this is correct. It's kind of like when you say, hey, I don't necessarily believe, but I'm not going to do something really, I'm not going to do something that's going to make my life worse, just because I don't believe, right? So I think there's an element of, he believes that there are things he cannot explain, so he has a certain humbleness about him that way.
I like Grant a lot, actually, because I mean, obviously, I like Sarah, but she's the main character, you know, and you're going to like her anyway. And obviously, her problems with her dad. But I really like Grant because he has this, okay, I was mean to her when we were younger. I've got to make it up to her. Also, I think I might love her, and I'm going to just be the nicest guy I can with her. And I really like that. I just thought he's relatively simple in his motivations, but he seems to be doing his best to make amends and just be a good guy now, you know? So I really like that about him. Who is your favorite? I'm always interested in knowing who authors like the most in their own work.
So, you know, Lance actually, you know, was a favorite character of mine. You know, just I know that he's not quite the main character. Of course, Max. You know, I mean, it's really when you say which one's my favorite. Lance definitely was my favorite character. If I was, you know, in the story, I would probably gravitate to Lance. His personality is very strong, you know, and he, you know, just has kind of a larger than life personality, and
Yeah.
he's in the mix. Also, you know, kind of, you have this action reaction. He's also kind of nudging things in a certain way, you know, to, you know, kind of guide the story as well. And also, you know, the main characters are trying to, you know, figure out, you know, kind of how to find their path in life, right? So you have all these different elements, but you always have that really strong personality that's kind of trying to force you to do things that you really don't want to do. And that's what he does to his brother. He forces him down a path the brother would just assume, if he didn't have a brother, would probably just stay home and you know, do what he, you know, was, you know,
Yeah.
what he thought was important, right? But of course, we have these other people that are trying to guide us, you know, saying that that's not good enough, that you need to be challenged. And he's sort of the challenger in all of it. And, you know, definitely, you know, a very, you know, I guess you would think of him one way as a stereotype, but then he really isn't. He really isn't the stereotype. He's actually quite complicated for a side character.
Yeah. I should say the way the three brothers interact, I don't know, it's ridiculous, but also realistic and believable, because that is how like three brothers kind of would get on and doing these like ridiculous things, like the crazy scene where they try to convince Sarah that they're like using chainsaws on each other. And my first reaction is, oh my God, this is crazy. And then my second reaction is, I could see three lads doing that though. Like that does seem like, yeah, three brothers that are kind of always kind of competing with each other. And like, yeah, it's not unbelievable at all. It's just, it's crazy, but it's real.
Well, there's some elements in the book that are actually, you know, based in reality. I mean, of course, it's fiction, but you know, some of the elements, like the haunted house, actually existed at the time on the boardwalk. They did have character actors at the time. So when people read it and they try to compare it to today, they would think, no way would there be a working chainsaw, you know, in some place that where kids are walking around, and no way would there be this element of real danger, you know, and all these kinds of things. And actually, in the time, you know, we were a lot less safety conscious.
Yeah.
We did things, you know, for sometimes for thrills and things that really today, you know, definitely I agree that if I had, you know, if I'd written in today's society, there would not be a haunted house that, you know, kind of performed and acted like that and had, you know, real chainsaws going with real smoke and all that kind of stuff. But back then there was a real chainsaw guy.
Wow.
at the haunted house.
So how much of, I'm curious about this, because you say there's a, you know, some real elements in this. So how much is real? How much of yourself and your own experience is in the book?
I mean, some of the locations and the backdrop, you know, is you know, things that I had experienced growing up in the area. So people that are in the area would recognize some of the places and so forth. I mean, for instance, the lighthouse truly existed. The demise of the lighthouse, I took, definitely fiction, but definitely a lighthouse, and that was on the road. The road is that road does exist. It was a road that I grew up on. So quite a bit of the story. I really wanted to base it more in in kind of make a surreal story out of a realistic place, like a real place, that then you could tell a story, instead of making the book, elements to the, in far, far away galaxy and all these kinds of things. I mean, I really wanted someone to feel like, this could be, a place where I could have grown up. And actually I did. I grew up on that road. And so
Nice.
there's a lot as far as place wise, yes. As far as characters, did I have any, 3 brothers living next door to me and all these kinds of things? No. Okay. And
but do you side with the farmers or the fishermen? That's what I need to know.
So my father was actually, a fishing boat captain. And so I had, I grew up with this sort of dilemma that I wasn't going to be a fishing boat captain. And I had to figure out what else I was going to do with my life. Of course, my father in real life was very supportive, and wanted me to go off to college and things like that. And so he definitely, wasn't like the captain of the story at all.
I'm glad to hear it, because Rex is a bit, it's fair to say that it does come across that he loves his daughter in his own way. He's just one of those guys who doesn't know how to show it, and I think that does come across. He boasts about her when he's talking to other people, but he's kind of only proud of her when she's doing the things that he wants. She makes an amazing net, and he's so proud that she makes the net, but he's not proud that she wants to go to college or do anything that she wants to do. So it's like, okay, he has his failings, but I was also kind of like, I can see he tries sometimes, and he's trying to love her in his own way. And I think he's a complicated character.
He's self-interested, right? So this is the thing. She's surrounded by self-interested people, which, I mean, most of us in most of our lives, that's who we are surrounded by. I mean, he wants to keep her close. He's got his reasons. He's, controlling and possessive and all these things, but also, a parent, which a lot of parents are. I mean, it's part of the role of being parent to be worried, and to make sure you protect your children. And so to transition away from that, there's a balance, and it's a really difficult balance, because as you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, it's you've got all these different elements pulling on you, right? You've got your parents that want you to stay home. You've got these just circumstances that happen that are out of your control. You're trying to decide the best approach every day based on whatever is getting thrown your way. So the book really is about the hero of the story, this young girl. She's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. She's trying to get away from all these elements because she can't figure it out on her own, with all these things pulling on her. But it's not that easy. It's quite difficult in real life. You have a lot of things pulling on you. I mean, you may stay in your same hometown because really can't stand the thought of leaving your friends and family, and they can't stand the thought of you leaving, and yet that you may have had a different destiny if you had. So all these decisions, I mean, really, this is a book about, I guess, all the things that can come at you while you're trying to find your path. And
that's something that most of us have to deal with as well. We got to go off to college, we're going to stay in our hometown and all that kind of stuff. That's real, and you're right, the dad is self-interested. Max, obviously, as a kind of demon, is self-interested. He wants to take Sarah away to his own kind of realm and just keep her there. And there's that weird scene where he does that kind of ritual thing to heal her with the cutting and the burning, and it's very intense. And I thought, oh goodness, sorry, I'm struggling with this scene. This is very intense. And then, even as you say, like everyone is more or less self-interested. We've got the creepy guy, Eddie, who's trying to hit on her in school, and then he's telling these lies about her and things and attacks her at one point. So there's a lot of selfish characters. But to what extent do you think that Grant was self-interested? Because I can see that everyone has a little bit of self-interest, but I think overall, I think he did maybe want the best for her. But maybe I was just rooting for the romance too much. Maybe I'm blinded to his faults. I don't know.
No, I think he's very he's singular in his his character arc. I mean, he really wants to make amends. I mean, he feels guilty for the way that he's treated her. Although there's this little thing in the way, which is that she's also becoming quite beautiful, right? Over time, she starts off, kind of, wild looking and, really unkept and so forth, and they make fun of her. And then, they couldn't really predict it, I guess, but she got more and more beautiful as time went on. And so he's also attracted to her. So here it is. He wants to make amends. He wants absolution. And before he goes off to college, he wants to close that book. At the same time, he's attracted to her. And, the more he's with her, the more he wants to be with her, and realizes that he's going to end up leaving her behind. So he wants to take her with him. And it's only a couple of weeks, you're talking a couple of months, right? After a lifetime of mistreating her. And so he's conflicted, and he wants to make amends. So he's trying to help her also. He saves her, but he also wants to take her, and he becomes quite obsessive. He's got that possessive obsession that happens, he becomes obsessed with her, looking across the field, her house is so close, and, all that. And so he's conflicted. He really starts off with a mission to do that, but it's really difficult when you also know, well, of course you want to make amends. Of course, he knows, of course, he wants to apologize, but she's also really pretty now. So, what's his real motivation? Right? He's attracted to her. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, I suppose you have to wonder,
which plays out in the later. Well, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, you have to wonder, would he have put the same effort in if she hadn't been pretty,
Right. And and it is a point, right? So you have people, it's funny, I think if when people read the book, they will, they'll bring up these points, and these are really valid points, right? And also in real life, I mean, you've got a lot of people, I've got people that'll bully you or make fun of you and so forth. And then later they may like something you have, or they might, like something about you. And now they're apologizing. And when they do, it's probably, motivated by something. It may be motivated by something, and you know what. And so, it's, and you have people that say, wait, she wouldn't possibly like this guy next door. He's been bullying her whole life. But then again, she's also disgusted by her life. She also knows that she's the, daughter of a fisherman, that there's fish on the boat, that it's disgusting. I mean, she in some ways probably agrees with some of the criticism, right? He also doesn't like it. And, so maybe some of the forgiveness is there, I don't know, but the characters are quite complicated, much like real life, and what they do is unpredictable, I think. And I really spent a lot of time trying to make sure that the reader would not know what happens next.
No, you're right. It is unpredictable at times. And I think also Sarah and Grant have some parallels in their life. They're both working for their parents. They do both kind of want to go away and do something a little bit more to their own taste. So they do have that empathy. But, it is unpredictable. I mean, there's a part where they go up right after Max tells her he's had a premonition of her death. So, okay, well, I just go up in a plane with Grant then. Like, there's no fear. There's just this like recklessness sometimes, And I think that's kind of charming in a way because they're young and they're not going to be making the most sensible decisions. But if someone told me I was going to die, I wouldn't go on a plane with a stranger, or a semi-stranger. But there we go.
That's
That's
when you know that you're going to die. Maybe she realizes that this is her only opportunity to do the few things in her life, and then she knows that she sees the facing of eternity, right? So I mean, that's the thing, is that Max potentially shows her the other side.
yeah.
And when he does that, she realizes how, it's just, even though her life is not that great, it's still a life. And the afterlife, that's forever, that's ongoing. And I think it put some perspective in her thinking that she's being tortured all the time, right? So when she comes back from that, it's very, I mean, and spoilers all over the place on this concept, by the way. When she comes back from it, she's on a mission to find a path to happiness, right? To find a path to fulfillment, not knowing how long it's going to last. So when he says, look, I'm going to take you soon, you're going to die soon. Somebody's going to murder you, that kind of thing, then, she's got to just keep going. She doesn't want to just give up, right? She wants to keep going, and just the way that we would expect her, which means she's turned the corner a little bit, because in the very beginning of the story, she was so willing to just give up, right? And I had to have her give up, because it's, I wanted to show, I guess, the consequences of giving up so easy, even though, because, life is quite hard, right? So we really shouldn't probably try to give up so easy. There's still some other things in life that we should probably experience.
And she does kind of trick Max to get that freedom. And then I'm thinking all along, has she tricked the demon guy, or is he knows more than we know and he can take her back when he wants, so it's fine, and you kind of always, that suspense is there in the back of the whole rest of the book then, But you're right, we did some spoilers, but we'll not talk about kind of the ending sections, because I don't think we never really talk about the end of a book, because people should read it. But I just wanted a quick question, because there's some mystery in the book, and it just kind of makes me think, you did some private investigating work. How did that come about?
So, do you mean like what part of mystery are you?
Well, I know it's just because obviously you did private investigative work, but at the same time you haven't written an Agatha Christie style, like a straight up investigative novel, but you have still included some elements of mystery in the book. So it's interesting. Like, is that something that you wanted to write about, based on more of those experiences that you had?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's not quite, a whodunit sort of thing. But there's definitely some elements there. I think, in investigation work, my specialty is more in deception, and I, more into mostly just trying to make sure that people are being honest, or telling the truth.
Right.
And so some of those deception tactics, some of those things I've put in the book. There's that makes it, it makes it, I guess, more like a suspense. There's some suspense elements, and and there's so few characters. I did that on purpose. I really don't like the stories that introduce 25 characters and you're supposed to figure out who did it, and they're bringing up people all over the place and all their different motivations. And so I just decided I wanted to make a very small, I wanted to introduce one character at a time, bring them into the story, and then really have things happen between this very small group, and still you won't know quite what's going to happen. And who does, who's responsible for what, and you really don't even know how much Max is responsible in certain places, because I put in the book this idea that, he can obviously kind of come into your dreams. And, what is his limitation on that? I haven't quite made it clear at the end of the first book, but he may or may not have limitations. So the area where this book is based out of was really Delaware Indian land, a long time ago, before the colonization. And it has, so some of the elements of the book bring in a certain amount of point of view of the kind of the area, the cultural, the local culture, and is really where some of this comes from. And and how there's like kind of a recycling of the earth, and debt to the earth and things like that. All that comes in. It's kind of much more cultural for the area, and you really but so if you can imagine, Max is able to enter the dreams of at least in the area, maybe he can enter the dreams even if you leave and really you don't know. You get a hint of that because they do go off quite far away, and it seems that she's experiencing having Max there, and you just don't know if she's just imagining it or not. That's the problem.
Yeah, and that's kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. Not everything is made clear. You did say there at the end of the first book, so is there going to be a sequel?
There's not a sequel yet. It's my intention. You mentioned private investigation. I have a investigation company, and it's been quite busy. And so when COVID was going on, everything was slower, and I thought, well, I'm gonna knock out these 3 books. So I have intentions of 3 books. So we will, and I have outlined a second book, and it's just a matter of how much time in between will be. But yes, I've got the book. I consider them in, from a story point of view, I see them as, 3 books.
Cool.
Possibly more, but Sarah's story, really the first book is about how she ended up with superpowers, right? So that's, kind of the beginning of how did she end up, with superpowers, and you really don't know much about, what her talents may be and so forth, but really she's on the path of kind of an empowered path, right at the very end, and she's, got a lot of superpowers she could potentially use, right? She's got powers from a divine entity, right? So there's a lot of possibilities there.
That could go a lot of ways, yeah. And I picked up on your little hint about the sequel, so maybe I'll do my own investigative agency next. I'm very, very astute with that. Now, the last question we always ask every author is, and I never really kind of let anyone prepare for this, so it's going to come out of nowhere, but if there's one book that you've ever read or been aware of, and you've wished, I wish I was the person who'd written that, what would the book be?
It's definitely a hard one.
People go different ways. Some people think with just their favorite book from childhood. Some people think, well, which book made the most money,
I'm not, it's funny. I think the most thought, it's kind of, for me, it's interesting. I think, and this, it's, I'm trying to think of, and this, it's a story of probably, so the problem is when you ask me this question, I really like survival stories.
Right.
And you can't create a survival story unless really the person, there's someone that goes through it. A real life survival story. And when you go through it, the person that's writing it is telling the story. And to me, the story, there's 2 stories really, but for me, the endurance, expedition to the, with the Antarctica and like so the Endurance was a ship and it got stuck in the ice. And then all the people that were on the ship had to try to figure out how to survive. And and the survivors told that story. And so would I want to be,
Yeah.
would I want to be the person on the ship that had to survive that? I would say no.
No.
I wouldn't want to have lived that life. But those stories are quite fascinating. And what's fascinating is just the human spirit to survive and how long. I mean, when you read these books about, for instance, how they did survive that, it reminds, that's the kind of book that I wrote, right? It's a book about survival. And so how fascinating it would have been to interview and to research that particular, that just the story of the Endurance, I think would be, probably the highlight would be something that I would have loved to do. I really love research, and I really have a lot of curiosity about, just how people dig deep to make to survive. And, it's really not survival. Everyday life can be a struggle. And so it's very, it's very difficult. People have difficult lives and they get through them. And the ones that, are able to navigate that, are very tough individuals. And I really admire that. So, just in general, I think, it's the stories of shipwrecks and things like that interest me the most. And I love reading those sorts of things, and would love to write a book about a real life, be the first one to write about a survival story like that.
So that's a unique answer. We've not kind of had anything like that before. I wish I could write the book without undergoing the trauma required to have had the experience to write the book.
Research the book and then write it. Yes, I don't want to go through anything like that.
Well, awesome, Sharon. Thank you very much for calling in, and thanks for your time. And I'll put a wee link to the book in the show notes and things like that, so that people can pick up a copy if they want. And that's us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for enjoying the book, reading the book. I really love it, when people tell me that they've read it. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody sends me any and would like to have, I guess, insights into the book. So I appreciate it very much.
Well, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks.